Oh, oh, that scared me. Sometimes when I try to make the presentation larger, it freezes. Hopefully, it's not going to happen. By the way, this is the worst start to any session recording, so the people after the fact probably won't know what I'm talking about. Let's try that again. Okay, looking good. Whew. Welcome to the week 3 go-to session. This is the third of 4 sessions we're having this month. We're at the halfway mark of the month, so yay! We're almost finished. As I said right before I started the recording, we're actually probably a little bit more than halfway through because we're fitting 4 weeks of material into 3 weeks. The good news is this session will be a little bit shorter than normal simply because I've eliminated one of the activities that students usually need to complete during the month, and a good portion of this session dealt with that, but I'm not going to cover that today because that's been eliminated. So the good news is we're going to jump right into like what you're going to be doing for the final project for this class. Okay, but quickly, just an overview of what I'm going to cover. I want to make some reminders about the essay because that's really we're going to get into what you're going to do for your actual multimedia public service announcement. You're going to write an essay where you explore your issue, but then you'll ultimately create an actual public service announcement, much like what you see on television or hear on the radio. And we'll get into that today. But first, I'd like to back up and talk real quickly about the essay. Then we'll get into that public service announcement stuff, and then we'll leave some time for some questions and answers. All the quiz questions today appear, I think, near the end of this session, or they might interrupt a time or two, but mostly I think they come near the end. Okay, so let's get moving. First, I showed this slide in last week's session. I just want to put it up there quickly again in case people need to take a screenshot or jot down notes. But this is a pretty basic structure to follow. And if it seems kind of broad, I apologize. It's just because you do have the power as writers to sort of create the essay as you see fit as well. There's no one way to write an essay, but if you're looking for some general advice, this is a pretty good thing to follow. I'll just go through this quickly because I already went through it in last week's session. But most of you have already written an introduction. I'm commenting on those right now. And if it's more or less in place, maybe it needs a little bit of tweaking, but if it's more or less set, then great, you have the opening paragraph of your essay. That was the design of that first discussion activity, that you actually start moving just not only on topic selection, but actually writing what could function as an opening paragraph for your essay. So with the introduction in place, that you begin hopefully with some sort of hook, and then a brief examination of the issue and a thesis, which for this class is your call to action, what you want a specific audience to do about the problem you've identified. Basically, the body of the essay becomes pretty simple. That you'll further define the issue. Remember, the introduction, you'll give us a brief snapshot of what the issue is, but you're going to save the bulk of that definition for the body of the paper, right? And if you have 2 different points you want to make while you're defining the issue, those should go in separate paragraphs. If you have 3 separate points to make regarding your issue, you would have 3 separate paragraphs. Make sure that you do devote a paragraph or 2. Most people can do it in 1 paragraph to your actual call to action, what your solution is, or what you're asking a specific audience to do. Students can sometimes forget about that. They write excellent reports on their topic, but they never quite get around to exploring what it is they want a specific audience to do. And then some sort of conclusion would be nice, right? A short paragraph that brings the essay to a satisfying close. Oswaldo asks, do we have to have at least 3 references? No, no, no. You need at least 1, and it needs to come from the Full Sail Library database. I just encourage having more, because usually you probably need, unless you find just an amazing article through the Full Sail Library database that has lots of rich information, it's probably good to have 2 or 3 different opinions or voices or perspectives to draw upon, either to use facts, statistics, quotations. And those 2 additional sources can also come from the Full Sail Library database, or they can come from credible sources online. I think I addressed that in the week 1 session, that you should think back to your DGL class and use a bit of common sense. What separates credible from not credible? Right? So it doesn't have to be super scholarly or academic. USA Today counts as a credible source. CNN.com counts as a credible source. Specific video game sites that have long histories and an editorship hierarchy in place, like GameSpot or IGN or Game Informer, those count as credible things. But people's random forum posts or people's random blogs or sites where you can't quite figure out who the author is. Those are, the typical stuff that should alert you to. I'm not sure where this information comes from, and thus I'm not sure if I can trust it. Earl asks, is LexisNexis appropriate? Yes, LexisNexis is one of the Full Sail library database tools. So yes, anything you find through there is allowable. Again, not every result you're going to get through the library is going to be awesome. I mean, sometimes there are clunky articles or articles that are only 100 words or articles that are little more than blurbs that were tucked into a magazine page somewhere. They're not even full columns. I mean, use judgment. But yeah, LexisNexis, which returns lots of newspaper articles, is absolutely allowable. Someone else had asked a question earlier. Riva said, "Does that have to go in the first paragraph?" No, the slide here is for the essay as a whole. So each bullet point represents a different part of the paper. So this first bullet point would be your introduction paragraph, which you've hopefully already written. Okay, and this would represent the body of the paper. These next two bullets, and then a conclusion of some sort. Does the call to action need to be in the first paragraph with the thesis, or could be a later? I think we should get a pretty strong sense of what that call to action is in the first paragraph at the end in your thesis. If it's a little bit subtly stated, that's fine. But readers do want a sense of what you're working toward, so that they know why they're reading. If it becomes a mystery why they're reading, if you're writing about, for example, the need for streaming music services to pay higher royalty amounts to artists, we'd kind of like to know what your position is before we get too deep into the paper. Okay. Oh, I want to show something real quickly as well. If you look at your activities page, and actually let's go to the essay activity itself, which will also be a nice reminder of when it's due. Okay, so 3.3, appeal for action. It gets confusing because I technically call it assignment number one because it's your first and really only writing assignment for the month, but it's in week 3, so don't get confused. And it's due December 11th, which is in a couple days, right? That's Thursday. Okay, I might be moving that. it, or maybe not. We'll see how things go. And I said several times during the month that I do apologize if it seems like the month is a little bit chaotic. It's simply because of the nature of us fitting 4 weeks of material into 3, and it seemed unfair. Like typically you would have handed in your essay this past Sunday, but that seemed like a pretty tall order when everybody's just back from Thanksgiving, to surprise them with, "Hey, you have 5 days to write a paper." So I've bumped it to Thursday of this week. Riva, I mean, you can try it out. I mean, I'm not going to like take massive. I'm not going to take points off or something. Uh, but it's a general principle of writing that we want to know on some level where the paper is heading. People are typically crunched for time. This is more similar to, not business writing, but a sort of more direct announcement. It's not a creative piece. It's not a personal essay, and so readers kind of want to know the direction where something is headed pretty early. Okay, so the Peel for Action essay, which is due Thursday. If we go into the assignment itself, you have a lot of tools here. You have, again, the APA Basics PowerPoint presentation, which I encouraged you to go through last week. You have a checklist to make sure that you're doing everything the assignment asks. But you also have, oh my gosh, where did it go? Do I have it under a separate activity? Usually I have a sample student essay here. Maybe it's under the week 3 overview. Nope, it's not there either. Okay, I'm going to move on, but after this session is over, I'm going to upload. I do have a sample student essay for you to look at, so you can get a sense of what these things look like for real. And he does a pretty good job of following what I showed on that slide. An introduction that ends with a clear thesis, which is his call to action, exploration of the issue, exploration of what he wants a specific audience to do, and then a conclusion. I can't believe I didn't upload that with the activity. Okay, I'll fix that. But you will have some tools and some examples to look at. And now that I've been thinking just out loud, I am going to keep that due date as the 11th. But if people have specific problems meeting it, just let me know, and I can perhaps offer an extension of a day or two. It's pretty important that we get moving on it. But at the same time, I'm trying to be as flexible as I can in December because it's just a crazy, crazy month. By the way, is it just a crazy month for me, or does it feel crazy from the students' end as well to try to have to get through this month? Reva says it's crazy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if it looks a little bit chaotic on my end, I apologize, but it's really designed to give you guys the most flexibility as possible, which is why I've thrown out one of the major assignments for this month. So you're actually doing a little bit less than you typically would. Let's start talking about the final project, because here's the thing: you're going to write that essay. Hopefully, you'll get it by be done, get it done by Thursday. If you need an extra day or two, let me know. I can be flexible on that. But once you finish that essay, like the essay's done, that's your one essay for the month. I'll respond to you with feedback. Okay, I'll give some suggestions. But then the next step is to take your material and turn it into an actual public service announcement. Way back in week one, we talked about examples, right? Those Sarah McLaughlin commercials that we see on television. Here in Florida, we have these. I don't know how many people here live in Florida or are on campus students, but we have these really horrifying anti-smoking ads that are just kind of gross to watch. But Smokey the Bear, only you can prevent forest fires, and I don't know how common they are anymore, but you still hear from time to time public service announcements on the radio. So you'll be doing something similar. But it's just going to be based on your topic. But here's just a quick reminder that we do see public service announcements around us all the time. Like here's a billboard: hug, don't slug. There's no excuse for domestic violence. If your hugging is turned to slugging, we can help. Call the Family Crisis Center. As minimal as this is, I mean, it has all the requirements of a public service announcement, right? It has a specific topic, domestic violence. It even has a sort of call to action, right? If you're in trouble, call this number. So it's a minimal message, but it is a public service announcement. And I'd like to quickly give other examples of public service announcements that you may see all the time, but maybe you just didn't pay attention or weren't aware of it. These are some public service announcement examples from the Sherwood Group. We're just going to look at a couple real quickly here. These are pretty awesome print ad style PSA. So they're not the kind that you'll create for this class because we have very, very specific formats that you'll need to follow. You won't be creating a print ad, a visually driven single piece. But still, they're interesting to look at. And these are put together by teams of designers, okay? Like a whole team has to come together to come up with a concept, to execute it, to either shoot the photo and then play with it in Photoshop or come up with the images digitally on their own. But if we look at a couple examples here, like I like this one a lot. I actually don't like it, but it's powerful. I don't know how well you can read the wording, but it says every 60 seconds a species dies out. But even if we blocked out that wording here, like the visual is so powerful, we already kind of know what this PSA, this public service announcement, is about. We know it has something to do with animals, and we know it has to deal something with time running out, right? Because the hands of the clock are literally crushing this animal, which is a seal. I've had some students in past months say it looks like a rat, but no, it's a seal. Um, and this is a print ad, so it's working much more powerfully visually. It's almost the visual that's driving the public service announcement more than anything. But then if you need help, yeah, you have some, again, minimal wording to help you recognize what the issue is. Um, and think back to those fancy Greek words that I mentioned in week one, the ones I told you I didn't care if you really remember the names, but you should remember what they're about. So pathos is working pretty powerfully here, right? Like you see this image and you're probably pretty disturbed, or you feel bad for the animal in the picture, or you feel this sort of, right, it tugs on your heart the way those Sarah McLaughlin things do. Okay, good, people are showing off in the in the chat. They remember the terms logos, ethos, and pathos. So pathos is working powerfully here. Technically the other two are here even if they don't seem like it. Like here's a factoid, right? Every 60 seconds a species dies out. So there's logos. It might be minimal use of logos, but we're getting a fact, a shocking fact. And ethos is kind of invisible, but it's technically here because this group, Bund, works in this area. So they sort of have credibility. You know that these are issues that they work on. Um, There's so many good ones here, but oh, this one's a really good one too. Okay, again, the visual is working more powerfully than anything. And by the way, these are sort of graphic design oriented print ads. And again, you need an entire group of graphic designers and perhaps even people outside the graphic design team who just come up with concepts to execute something this high level. But again, if you don't even need to read the words, and we already know what's going on here, right? We know it has to do with smoking, and the image itself already says a lot. And again, pathos is probably the thing that's working most powerfully because your eyes are first drawn to that image. And it's no mistake. In both PSAs, these print PSAs, lettering tends to be small and it's sort of tucked away because the first thing they want you to see is the image and just to be shocked and overwhelmed by the visual on the screen. And then when you read the words, you realize how clever it is, right? Cigarettes, smoke, people, which is a reversal of what we usually say, which is people smoke cigarettes, because I don't know if we have any second English as second language people here, but smoke in English can also colloquially refer to obliterate, to wipe out, to destroy. So there's a nice play on words here, right? It's not people smoking cigarettes, it's cigarettes smoking people, and that's what we see in this image here. Cigarettes are wiping people out, and it's a powerful image. So again, you see PSAs all around. You hear them on the radio. They exist. And keep that in mind when we talk about the final project, because you're going to have to pick a format that best suits your chosen topic. Oswaldo writes, the PSA can be an image with minimum text. No, I'm just giving these as examples of real world PSAs that you see out in the world. Sometimes, if your field is graphic design, because Full Sail does have degrees in graphic design and digital arts and design, and if people can convince me, I don't expect them to create something like this. Again, this is something that a team of very talented people would create. But if people can convince me that they can execute a high level concept the way that these are. Sometimes I'll give approval for graphic design students to work on this, but that's pretty much it. Because I don't know, I won't get into it, but it's basically not an option if you're not a graphic design student. Because the temptation would be just to take any picture you find on the internet, throw it up there, put a couple words over it, and boom, there's my public service announcement. No. A lot more effort needs to go into it. Okay, so what options do you have available to you? I'm going to close this and go back to my PowerPoint. Oswaldo, we'll need to talk, okay? You should probably send me a message through FSO and we can talk. I'm not against people creating print style, visual driven ads that don't have a ton of text, but they have to convince me that they have a concept, that they have, like, it's not just. I won't do it now, but I could show how quickly I could throw together a sort of not so ambitious, underwhelming print style ad. So, yeah, people who have sharp skills in graphic design or computers and can really convince me that they can execute a really highly thoughtful concept. Sometimes I'll prove it, but it's also a matter of fairness because your classmates will be hand drawing comics, or they'll be writing and recording songs, or they'll be shooting a film or video. And it just doesn't seem fair if they're spending hours, days, maybe even an entire week on their projects, and somebody else is just throwing together an image in a couple seconds. Not suggesting that that's what you would do. I'm just saying that that's the thing that makes me nervous. Okay, so what options do you have open to you? Basically, I have 4 of the 5 captured here. You can create a short song or jingle. You can create a radio style sort of podcast. Okay, so it's an audio, purely audio public service announcement. You can create a short comic, either hand drawn or using a comic generator, or you can create a short film. And let me switch to the actual final project options sheet. If you haven't seen this yet, I encourage you to go grab it. It's found under the week 3 overview, so it's right here. And here are your options, okay? So the ones I just went over. And I'm going to go over these real quickly, not detailing every word, but I'll highlight some important things. You could create a short 1 to 3 minute video, okay? For this option, you have to have a script. Music, sound effects, and voiceover should be used to enhance the video. The only notes that I would give here is that, yeah, I require a script for most of these projects for 2 reasons. One, it gives me some more writing to evaluate, because if all the information is appearing on screen, meaning that I have to hear it or listen to it. Having a script gives me actual words on the page to evaluate. Second, and this helps you, is that it forces you to do some planning. Most of you are great. Most of you will hand in ambitious projects, but there's always a student or two who just turns on the camera on his laptop, talks impromptu for a minute, hits stop, and says, "That's my video PSA." That's not a video PSA. That's just you talking to the camera for a minute. So a script sort of encourages you to develop some planning. The audio PSA, the same thing. It's just it's not a video. Okay, it's completely audio. This option also requires a script, and music and or I should say and or sound effects should be used to enhance the audio piece. This one, my only cautions are again, audio podcast in my mind means like, okay, commercials sell products, so a commercial is different than a public service announcement, but they're similar in the sense that, when you listen to a 30 or 45-second or 1 minute commercial on the radio, that's sort of what you're trying to imitate. It's just it's a public service announcement, not a commercial. Or people can sometimes have fun with the format. Maybe they create a mock interview type thing that you would hear on the radio where two people are talking and the interview communicates the public service announcement information. Or someone imitates a sort of radio show style. So he may not, well, he might have a partner or not, but during that sort of radio segment, the public service announcements gets delivered. So you can have fun with it. You can be creative. You can play with format. But essentially, it's a 1 to 3 minute audio piece. The only other caution is kind of the one that I said for the video PSA. The audio podcast is not you just turning on your microphone and reading your essay out loud. All these formats. The challenge is that you have to take the material you're going to write about in your essay, but you won't be able to use all of it. You'll only be able to use what you think are the most important and salient parts, and feature those in a video or a podcast or some of these other formats. So it's really a sort of exercise in conciseness and selection and creating a sort of whole new project that's different than an essay, because you only have 1 to 3 minutes to work with. Next, you can create a short comic. This one doesn't require script just because all the words will appear in the actual comic, and I can evaluate grammar and mechanics that way. It can be hand-drawn or generated using a comic program. Some of you already mentioned some of them in the chat. Stuff like Powtoon, Bitstrips. I'll mention a few others in another slide. I don't really mind. I think hand-drawn comics are cool. I think it's awesome when people show off their artistic skill. I don't penalize people who use software. I think that's fine as well. Just understand that again, I can sort of spot the difference between a Bitstrips comic that is thrown together in 30 minutes and one that's actually a bit more ambitious. Same thing with Powtoon, etc. They're deceptively simple programs in the sense that they're not difficult to use, but in order to have them do what you truly want them to do, it takes a little bit of skill and time and patience, and ambition. By the way, I mean a comic. There's not, and I don't mean to mock. I swear I'm not. I'm just mentioning things to be careful of. Like there's nothing more dull than a comic in which nothing is happening, where in one panel it's just a person standing there saying, "Hi, today I want to speak to you about X." And then in the next panel, the same person standing there again. I want to talk about the important issue of, right? I mean, every panel is basically not really. Comics tend to be more story driven or concept driven. So, pick a format that you think you're most comfortable with and that best suits your topic. If a comic you don't think works because you don't really have a story idea or you don't have an innovative way to tell your public service announcement in visual form, then maybe an audio option is better. Oswaldo says it can be a drawing by hand. Yes, absolutely. I get fewer and fewer of those, but I do like seeing hand-drawn comics. The game PSA I'm actually not going to talk too much about because so few people choose it that I just prefer to talk to them one-on-one. But basically you can create a short playable game that communicates your public service announcement. The song jingle, you compose a 2 to 5 minute based original song based on your public service announcement. This option requires lyrics, okay? So it's not really so much a script, but I do need your lyrics for a couple reasons. One, because it can sometimes be difficult to follow along. But again, it also gives me something to evaluate. You can read through the rest of the details, like you should be the one writing You should probably be the one singing. Okay. The only piece of advice I can give here for the song and jingle, I only get a couple of these every month too. I'd say maybe a handful out of 50 students. The biggest piece of advice I can give for the song or jingle is that you need to be 100% literal in your lyrics. Okay, this isn't time to show off how subtle of a lyricist you are. This is not the time to show off that you're the next Bob Dylan or the next Leonard Cohen or whoever's considered a great lyricist these days. This is your chance to be 100% literal. Again, if you think about commercials, commercials, of course, are not public service announcements, they sell products, but think about the way that they sell products. A McDonald's jingle, I mean, you know what it's saying, right? You're not confused. Other jingles as well. So the same thing here. Your public service announcement, it will take the form of a song, but still it needs to be 100% literal. And this is where I'll introduce this made up term that I have, what I like to call the stranger test, and this applies to whatever format you choose. I should be able to pull any stranger off the street, have them listen to your song, have them read your comic, have them listen to your audio piece or watch your video, and they should not be lost at all about what your topic is, what your message is, and what you want a specific audience to do. Just like that billboard we looked at. Nobody is confused by what that billboard is saying about domestic violence. So your projects have to sort of pass the same test. And finally, yeah, if you have a different format idea that you want to run by me, like Oswaldo was talking about, can he do a print style ad? It's possible you can do a different idea. You just have to speak to me about it. Some people create, if I give approval it's for the print ad, or some people create an infographic, right? This actual PDF that we're looking at now is an example of a PDF of an infographic. Some people sometimes design websites that function as public service announcements. If you have something that doesn't fit one of these five categories, you can run it by me. Okay, and the rest of the stuff you can read on your own. It's just reminders, like Full Sail has PG-13 guidelines, so no bad language, no mean stuff, no ugly stuff. It should seem common sense too. Like who has a public service announcement that's going to want to use that kind of language? You always need to create whatever you use in your project. Okay, you can only use images, video, audio, and music that belongs to you, meaning that you created it, or that are allowable. And I'll talk in a second about where you can find allowable resources. Okay, but basically, just a giant warning to be clean and not to plagiarize by taking things that you do not own. As Waldo asked, the topic of the PSA needs to be the same as the essay. Yes, you're working on the same topic all month, so you're not switching to a completely new topic, unless your topic was so problematic that you think you need to change or something like that. But most of you, actually all of you, I'm encouraging to stick with what you have. Even if I express concerns about your topic, if I haven't written back to you yet, most of you I've already gotten in touch with and said, stick with your topic. Okay, December is a crazy month. Other months, maybe I would encourage you to tweak or change, but now I think it's best to stick with what you got. I can still evaluate your essay and your ultimate video or audio piece fairly and efficiently, even if I'm not crazy about the topic, or even if the topic isn't pitch perfect for this project. I can still deal with it. Okay, so here's quiz question number one. And by the way, these quiz questions, the easiest quiz of my life, and because there are no sort of like test test questions designed just to see if you watch the session. They literally could be answered even without watching the session. First, what format will you use for your multimedia project? Okay, I just went over 5 of them: video, audio, etc. Tell me what you're going to use. Super easy, right? I just want evidence that you're moving on this and you're thinking about a project, because you probably should start thinking about it. I know we're putting the carriage before the horse a little bit because you haven't even written the essay yet, but what do you think you'll do? Okay. A reminder that those fancy Greek words, pathos, logos, and ethos, I just demonstrated how even in minimal sort of everyday sorts of public service announcements that you might see around you, they're at work. So you should kind of remind yourself that you'll need to draw on these things as well. If you don't consciously think about it, that's fine, but probably you should be at some level appealing to emotion, even if that's not your main motivator. Uh, Logos, most of you probably should have some sort of fact or statistic to back up what you say. Ethos, if you're building a credible sounding document and you're drawing upon the expertise of others, you're probably handling ethos pretty well as also. But keep those things in mind. Which leads me, I think, to quiz question number 2. How will your chosen format, meaning your video, your audio, whatever format you've chosen, how will it appeal to your target audience? Be specific, okay? I want you to give me a sense of what your PSA will need to do. There are no right answers here, okay? I understand that you still need to write the essay, you still need to get feedback on it, but I want you to start already brainstorming in your mind. Okay, if I choose the comic option, what will the comic need to do to successfully communicate my message? Or if I choose the video, what will that video need to do to appeal to my audience? Okay? I'm asking you to give me some sense of what you're thinking in terms of the format you've chosen and what it's going to do. You might change your strategy, you might change specific details, that's fine. But I want you to start moving on this so that it's not Saturday of week 4 and you're suddenly scrambling to just throw something together. Okay, some creative sources that you can use. I mean, I encourage people to create as much as they can. Um, Most people have smartphones. Most people have cameras, right? So you can shoot your own footage. Most people have access to some sort of video recording device, either on their phones or their tablets or even their laptops. Or if you're a film student, you might even own a simple but professional camera. I think it's always awesome when students shoot their own footage, take their own shots, hand draw their own things, but that doesn't mean that you can't use outside materials. And here are some things that you can use. Compfight.com, this is an image site. I'm going to go there in 2 seconds to kind of show how it works. Westar, which is a music database that's found through the Full Sail Library. This is awesome because it has lots of sort of generic sound files in a variety of musical genres that you can use if you need background music in your project or if you want to build upon it for your song. They're available to you as Full Sail students. Normally they cost anywhere from $15 to $60 for a single sound file, but as a student you get them for free. And here are a bunch of animation tools. Pixton.com, bitstrips.com, Powtoon, which is technically presentation software, so it's technically in the vein of like PowerPoint and Keynote and Prezi, but because it's so dynamic and because you can choose really cute looking characters who move on the screen, it feels like a comic. Lastly, GoAnimate.com, which is a little bit harder to describe. It's not a static comic. It's a comic that has movement. I believe if you sign up for the free version, you're limited to 30-second segments, so you probably have to string together 4 or 5 30-second segments in order to create a whole piece. But I have had people use GoAnimate.com. So real quickly, let me show you a couple of these. The first one is called Compfight.com. I'm going to close some things because, again, my machine is overheating. Ever since I switched to Yosemite, this has happened. Okay, so here's Compfight.com. This is a Flickr search tool. I really recommend that if you're going to use images that you don't create yourself, that they should really come from one of two places. First, the AP Images database, which you should be familiar with from DGL. Remember, you had a project where you had to find, I think, 4 images from the AP Images database, which is found in the Full Sail Library. Those sorts of images can be used. If you need to go somewhere else, I recommend Compfight. AP Images is great if you're looking for something very, very specific, like news-oriented or celebrity-oriented. You can usually find images because AP Images, those are the sorts of photos that are used in news stories. Compfight is more general. Like if you do a search for, I don't know, Jay-Z, you're probably not going to get many results. But if you need basic photos, like of students or classrooms or music, CompFight works great for that. So I'm going to do a search right now for puppies. Okay, so who doesn't love puppies? The first thing we need to do is make sure that we have either Creative Commons or commercial clicked, not any license, because what we're trying to do is get results that are allowable. First of all, anything above the dotted line here, don't go there. That's just a shill for another website that wants you to pay for images, and you should never have to pay for anything. But anything under the dotted line is safe to use. So let me pick out a cutie here. Oh, they're all so adorable. Let me pick this one. Okay, so I click on the photo. Up it comes. Right, look at that. Whose heart isn't melting right now? Let me blow the little guy up. See? Okay. Let's say I love that picture and want to use it. I can choose the size I want to download. Next week, we'll actually return to APA, and I'll talk about how we need to cite this photo in APA style. But for this week, because you're still probably overwhelmed from last week's APA discussion, I'm not going to get into it. So it's simply a matter of clicking whatever side you want. It gets downloaded, and then you can use it. Okay? So this is, by the way, all my pictures from my presentation. Let's go back to my presentation. Okay? All these came from CompFight. All these pictures. All from CompFight. Okay? So it's a great source to use if you need a quick image. The other one that I want to show real quickly is the Westar Music Database. So let's go to the Full Sail library. I really have to bookmark this thing. I keep going through this the old-fashioned way. I have to go through the 10 million logins again. Full Sail. Sign in. Allow. Yes, it's me. Okay, and we're in. So if we go to the library, just like we always do, and we go to the research databases, you're all experts in this now. Right? By the way, here's the AP images collection. So if you need images, here's the other place you can go. If we keep scrolling down, we'll eventually get to Westar. Okay, here it is, Westar Music, and it tells you what the what do you call it? The password and login is right down here. Okay, I think my material is already saved, so I'm going to go ahead and click on it and just go in. I believe it remembers my information. Yes. Okay, so I'm in. And once you're in, you can see there are lots of albums. They have those typical generic sounding titles like Rock, Solid and Sauntering, or Sports, Dynamic and Defiant. So yeah, they have these corny titles, right? Because they're basically generic tracks. They're written by real people. They're compositions, but they're compositions that are created so that people can use them in commercials or student projects, what have you. And as soon as you go in, you can listen to the different tracks. I believe you can preview them. And it's simply a matter of going through the checkout process. And if you're logged in under the Full Sail login, you won't have to actually pay anything. Okay, your charge will be zero, and then you can download it as an MP3 file and then incorporate it into your project. Okay, so that's another awesome source to use. Real quickly, some final comments before I show the final quiz question. If you're confused about a project format to use, I think the audio project is probably the easiest if you're not really that familiar with technology. I mean, the comic generators are also a good option. But again, sometimes the comic isn't the best option for people's given topics. But most people can learn to use basic audio equipment. You don't have to use a highfalutin program. You don't need to use anything super professional or fancy. And I know that we have some online students here, so I'm not sure how many of you have your launch boxes, your MacBook Pros. Do we have anybody here who has their Macs already? Nope. If you do have a Mac, it's pretty awesome because some tools like GarageBand or iMovie already come with a bank of sound effects and sounds. Like if I wanted to create a short video using iMovie, I could add music to it using a track from the soundbank. I could add sound effects like the sounds of crickets chirping or an audience applauding. But even if you don't use Mac and you're using a PC tool like Audacity or something, it's pretty simple to be able to use these elements. There are 10 million tutorials out there on YouTube. You have each other to rely on. You can ask me questions if you're confused. I'm not an expert, but yeah, I can probably answer a lot of the basic questions. So I would say, yeah, the audio piece is a good one to use if you're not really very tech savvy or using a comic generator to create your public service announcement. I'll actually give some more tips in the final go to session as well. Okay, so there's a list of resources that you can use. And next week we're going to talk about how to cite some of them. You don't have to cite things like Pixton or Bitstrips or Powtoon, but if you take an image from Comfite, it needs to be cited in APA style. If you take a music file from Westar, it needs to be cited in APA style. And I'm going to talk about that next week. Oswaldo says, what format? No, I was just talking about for people who are a little bit frightened about multimedia projects, that the audio option and the computer generated animation comic option are probably popular choices. Quiz question number 3: what tools and technologies will you use to complete your final project? And again, I want you to be as specific as possible and think about every aspect of it. I mean, even silly stuff like, I don't know, are you going to pick up a pen and paper and draft a script, or are you going to use Microsoft Word? If you're going to create an audio piece, well, what audio software do you think you're going to use? If you don't have a clue, you might want to start researching these things. Audacity is a popular tool for PC users. If you have a Mac, GarageBand functions just fine for audio pieces, and if not, iMovie for Mac. By the way, what is the popular tool for PCs now to create simple video projects? Anybody know? It's been so long since I've used PC. I feel horribly out of touch. Impressor? Okay, I've never heard of that. See, I'm badly out of touch. Movie Maker. Okay, yeah, I've heard of Windows. You know what? I've used that a long, long time ago in an early primitive form, but I used to use that for my introduction to film class. I would put together film clip discs that I'd then bring into class and just pop into the DVD player, and I think I was using Windows Movie Maker for that. But yeah, tell me what kind of software, and then tell me things like, okay, if are you going to use Powtoon? Are you going to use Bitstrips? Things like that as well. Are you going to go to Comfite for images? And don't just list everything on this slide. I shouldn't laugh, but students do that sometimes. They just go, "Oh, I'm going to use Comfite and Westar and Pixton and Bitstrips and Powtoon," and I say, "Really? You're going to use all that? You're going to use 3 competing animation tools for your project? So tell me what you're honestly going to use." Riva, what would you use for Mac? If you have a Mac, are you talking about audio or video? Audio. Yeah, I would say GarageBand is a pretty easy tool to use for basic recording. Mecca says, what if we decide to switch? That's fine. It would be nice if you let me know. I assume you're talking about switching project ideas or switching formats. That's okay. It would be nice if you send me a message just so I sort of don't get surprised. But yeah, you can switch, especially since we're so early on and you still have to write the essay and I still have to give you feedback. You certainly don't have to get married to the format right this second. Okay, final quiz question. There are always 4 questions. And I struggled to come up with a 4th question, and I couldn't. So here's your 4th question. What is the capital of Nebraska? Oswaldo says, I will do it by hand, so I need to explain why. No, but in the question about what tools and technologies you're going to use, I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. If you're going to do a hand-drawn comic, great. But most skillful artists kind of know how to do things like not only they hand draw it, but then they scan it and then they polish it and improve it in a program like Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. They know how to professionally add lettering. You don't have to have that level of expertise, though most people who are seriously into drawing kind of know how to do that already. But you should produce the best hand drawing possible. Sometimes I get really, chicken scratch type comics that were hastily drawn, and someone takes a snapshot with their smartphone and hands that in. That's not what you should be aiming for. I mean, again, 99% of the time, the people who choose to hand draw comics, they usually have some expertise in that area, and they kind of already know. I know that's not fair to expect people to already know how to do things, but it's not difficult. Most people have access. If you don't own a scanner, you have access to a photocopier at work or at school where you can just scan the image and have it sent to your email address, and then you can upload that image into a program, edit it, or if not edit it, at least have it in a somewhat more presentable format for when you hand it in. So that's the kind of answer I'm looking for. Yeah, it's absolutely fine to fix some stuff and improve stuff using Photoshop. That's kind of the goal here. Someone mentioned figure comics. Actually, that's not a joke. I forget the name of this site. I think it's XKCD. Has anybody heard of this? It's a comic site that features stick figure drawings, and some of them are pretty minimal. But I mean, they're actually pretty polished. Like this is actually a bit more skillful than you would think, right? So my theory is you don't have to be a great artist, but even if you're creating stick figure drawings, they should be the most professional and polished and best looking piece you can create. So this is an attractive comic, actually, right? Am I wrong about that? So it's even though it's stick figure. Oh, that reminds me of something I completely forgot to mention, which is you are creating the best public service announcement you can. I am most interested in the message, the clarity of the message, and that it's asking a specific audience to do something. Okay, I'm not an art critic. If you create a song, I'm not Adam Levine on The Voice. Okay, I'm not giving you feedback on your singing ability or your musical ability. I'm not Steven Spielberg, so I'm not judging your projects in that way. That said, I do expect you to produce the best project that you possibly can. So if this is the best comic you can create and it's satisfying all the requirements of a public service announcement, it can get a pretty high grade. Okay, I think this is a pretty nice looking comic. Same thing with your song, your video, what have you. Okay, so I don't know if that makes sense. It's sort of like an in between. I don't expect people to be create masterworks, but at the same time, I have a pretty good sixth sense about when projects are sort of unambitious. So you're trying to find a sort of in between ground. Okay, so there's quiz question number 4. What is the capital of Nebraska? If you don't know the answer, Google it. Okay, you will lose 25. I'd hate to see someone lose 25 points because they can't answer that question. Which opens us up now for the question and answer portion of the session. Are there questions that people still have about the final project options, about the essay and what it seeks to do, about anything about the class in general or due dates? Reva says, can you go back to quiz question number 1? I didn't copy it fast enough. Okay, I can do that. Really easy question. Just what format are you going to use? So tell me if you're going to create a video, an audio piece, a comic, a song. Okay, Mecca says, are we allowed to draw an image identical to a movie cover or album? Wow, that's a great question. I need to find out about that because I once had an answer to it and I can't remember what that answer is. That's a good question because we can't use copyrighted things. Every so often, someone does a PSA, for example, on I don't know something related to gaming, and then suddenly like the box art appears or a still taken from the movie is included, and then I have to say no, 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 you really can't do that because that's copyrighted material. I forget what the answer is if you were sort of drawing. I think it's a no-no. You'll have to get back to me about what you were specifically thinking of. But I think that like if you draw the McDonald arches, that can still technically be copyright violation. And we'll get more into this next week too. It's not that I mean we're trying to teach good principles here, which is that because you're all heading into industries where you won't be able to just grab whatever you want and use whatever you want without giving credit. We're trying to teach that here at Full Sail as well. So it's not that McDonald's or Disney or I don't know, Jay-Z or whoever's going to come down on you because you specifically use something. But yeah, we're trying to teach good principles here. So if you create an audio piece or a video and you want to use music in the background, as much as I love the new Taylor Swift song "Blank Space," or as much as I love that Megan Trainor song "All About All About that Bass," I don't want to hear it in your project. Okay, no copyrighted material can be used. So no images that you're not allowed to use, no copyrighted music. Sometimes people make, and I'm not saying it's an illogical assumption, but people think, oh, I bought this CD that allows me to do whatever I want. No, 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 no copyrighted stuff. Okay, any other questions, or did I miss anything? I am going to go back to the final quiz question, let it hang in the air for a couple more seconds, and I'm going to end the session. Well, I'm going to end the recording in just a second. I'll hang out and chat. But for the people who are watching, they can check out now if they like. And that's it for the people who are kind enough to attend. We had actually a pretty good turnout today of 9 people. If you're comfortable with what we've covered, if you don't have any questions, you're allowed to go and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for attending. I'll be here for a little bit to answer some more questions, and I'm going to stop the recording now.